But anyway, with that being said, this episode, like I said, is going to be making predictions. And it's going to be mainly about 4 things that we're going to try and make predictions. One is the vaccines and how that will play into us being able to open up fully, and specifically focused on US versus the rest of the world when it comes to vaccine. The second thing we're going to talk about is supply chain and inflation. How do those 2 things correlate, and what do I expect to happen moving into the future? The third one is crypto. As much as some people may hate to think of it, crypto is here to stay. No matter what anybody says, it's here to stay. And then the last one is the consumerism. How are people going to continue shopping going into the future of the rest of this year? What can we expect from consumers going into the rest of this year? So let's start off with vaccines. This is literally the limiting factor of everything going back to normal. And no, I'm not talking about just here in the United States, because in the United States, we've vaccinated about 50%, if not more than 50% of the entire population. However, the United States only accounts for about 1/5 of the global population. Or not even 1/5. Let me get that number right. Yeah, the US only makes up about 5% of the entire population. That is not a lot. Only 12 countries worldwide has been able to vaccinate more than 20% of its citizens. And the thing about a virus is, as long as it can find a host, it can continue to mutate, which means that we are not safe until everybody is safe. Less than 2% of the population outside of the wealthiest nations have been vaccinated. The US has to turn from being a vaccine hoarder into a vaccine giver, not just for the purposes of aiding the world to get out of this pandemic and this crisis, but also as a diplomatic play. Because while the US was hoarding all the vaccines and trying to vaccinate all of its citizens, China and Russia has been sending out their vaccines to every other country to get them vaccinated. And also, it's a soft power play. It's a way to say like, yo, we helped you out with this, so why don't you make a trade deal with us? That's what's happening. And the US, in order to get back on the level where the US once was, because let's be honest, the US has fallen out of favor in the last, I'll say 10, 12 years or so. The US has fallen completely out of favor with a lot of countries because the US has not been on that global stage like they once were. I'll say in the last, I say 10 to 12 years. I'll say in the last 4 years, specifically with our previous president, who just did all that he could to burn every single bridge that the US once had. And so trying to rebuild that bridge is going to start off with making vaccines more readily available outside of the US. So here's my prediction when it comes to vaccine. I predict that Biden will release all vaccines to other countries by at the latest the end of July. I think he's actually going to do it much sooner than that, because at that point, most of everybody in the US who wants a vaccine has gotten a vaccine, if we're being honest. The only people that are standing off are people who are like, oh my God, I don't want to get a vaccine because it does this and it does that. And no shots, you can do what you want, because at the end of the day, you can make your decision on whether you want to get a vaccine or not. But basically, everyone who wants a vaccine has gotten a vaccine. If you wanted to get a vaccine right now, you have access to a vaccine. So I think a lot of the extra vaccines that the US has been hoarding, Biden is going to make an announcement relatively soon where they're just going to open it all up and start shipping it out. Now, from the vaccines, we go into the supply chain shortage. And I alluded to it earlier when I was talking about everything that has happened so far this year, is we are seeing shortages on everything from oil to lumber to meat to Chick-fil-A sauces. Yeah, I mean, if you go to Chick-fil-A right now, they're limiting the amount of sauces that you can get. That's how bad the supply shortage has been. And Chick-fil-A, I use Chick-fil-A, 1, because I love Chick-fil-A, but 2, because Chick-fil-A is such a well-oiled machine. Like, if they start running out of stuff, you know that we really have a problem going on. And this is because the supply chain has been absolutely decimated due to the pandemic. Something to know about the way that we run the world when it comes to manufacturing is we do something called just-in-time delivery. In other words, whenever anything is being manufactured, the parts are going to be delivered very close to when they're needed. In other words, it's not something where you just stick on your shelf and you say like, oh, just in case I need it. No. When they order parts, is because those parts are going to be used almost immediately. So the world has been running on a just-in-time delivery. But when the pandemic came in, it shut down everything on every single scope and every single thing of your imagination. It basically removed the opportunity to do anything like just-in-time delivery, because now the focus became, well, we can't manufacture anything because if we're still close together, then people gonna get sick, people gonna get hurt. And so a lot of manufacturing lines got shut down. So now that they're starting to be brought back up, what's happening is it's not the supply that we need for today's demand. It's all the supply from 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago. So all of that demand has been piling up for months on months and months. So all the stuff that's coming out of the manufacturing yard now that's being shipped everywhere is to fill in all the demand from the past, which is why I think, and here's my prediction, that we are not going to see this change anytime soon. It is extremely hard to change a supply chain. It takes decades. It takes years for a supply chain to be changed. Now, one thing that I'm automatically predicting is we're going to see a switch from a lot of businesses going from just-in-time delivery to just-in-case delivery. In other words, they'll order a little bit more than they need. They'll have a little bit go on the shelf because now the worry is, what if we're dependent on a country that has to shut down for whatever reason? Not just because we had a global pandemic, but for any reason, whether it's a turmoil going on in the country or anything like that, we need to know that we can still have supply to be able to make the products that our customers want. Now, how does this affect inflation? We are already seeing inflation in almost everything from gas prices to used car sales to home prices. As you guys know, I complain about home prices all the time. The question is, will this be a small period of inflation where supply just needs to catch up to the demands? Or is this something that's going to be here to stay? If you ask Jerome Powell and the Federal Reserve, they're going to tell you this is just a transitionary period. And once the supply catches up, everything is going to go back to normal. My answer is, I think it's going to be transitionary. However, I don't see us going back to those old prices. I don't see us all of a sudden businesses reverting and saying like, oh, you know what? All these profits we've been making, I'm not going to take this profit. No. Business are going to keep and try and keep their profits. And plus, I think what we're going to see is not actual like inflation where you can tell like the prices are different. What we're going to see is shrinkflation, where it's going to feel like the paper towel that you bought last year just had a few more sheets in it than the one that you're buying for the same price this year. That's how inflation is going to hit your pockets. It's not going to be like, oh, all of a sudden I'm buying. It's just going to be like some of the items that you bought before in the past. You know how like your dad or your granddad would be like, yeah, the quality of products from days old was a whole lot better. The truth is it probably was, because in order to keep up with inflation, some businesses, what they do is they start downgrading. In order not to increase prices, they would downgrade the product. They would downgrade how good the product is in order for it to, and use cheaper materials in order to keep up with inflation. And that's what we're going to keep seeing. We're going to see shrinkflation, not actual inflation in prices. Very few businesses have pricing power. In other words, whereas inflation goes up, they can just adjust with inflation, which is why when you're picking companies to invest in, pick companies that have such an amazing brand and such pricing power that it doesn't matter what inflation does. For example, Apple. It doesn't matter what inflation does. Apple can increase their prices and people are still going to buy Apple products because it's an Apple product. And so that's just something to keep in mind going into the future. Now, the next one we're going to talk about is crypto. Since the end of 2020 to the beginning of this year, crypto has been on a massive run. I mean, Bitcoin went all the way from being like $6,000 last year to being over $60,000. Ethereum hit over $3,000. This shows us two things. One, crypto is here to stay. And I don't just say that because the price is shut up, but because a lot of businesses now hold crypto on their balance sheet, because now it's becoming more regular. It's a lot more mainstream than it was back in 2017. It's now just like an other asset class. For a lot of people, it's like, I invest in stocks and I also hold crypto because it's just another asset class. It's becoming something like gold almost. It's almost like people are like, oh my gosh, this is an inflation hedge, so I need to buy all of this crypto stuff, which I'm not sure that I would agree that it's an inflation hedge, but that's just me. But anyway, people are going that direction with Bitcoin and crypto and all of these stuff. So I don't think it's going anywhere. But the second reason why I say that it's here to stay is because crypto will no longer be its own thing. It's now being watched by the federal government. It's no longer trying to be its own its own entity of being a Wild West. Now it's being watched by everyone. Everyone is looking at crypto. People are losing money in crypto. And whenever people start losing money, they start complaining. And whenever people get scammed, they start paying a whole lot more attention to it. So there will be a lot more regulation. And whenever anything starts getting regulated, it means that it's here to stay. Just think of utilities. Once utilities get regulated, usually they're a business that is needed by the society, so it's harder for that business to go away. In other words, now that crypto is all of a sudden going to become regulated, it's going to, first of all, do some good things. As much as people hate regulation, regulation can be a good thing because it can remove the bad actors and it can guarantee some safety. It can guarantee a few things that everyone would like to be guaranteed within it. Already, we are seeing that the IRS is announcing different reporting standards that will be required if you hold crypto. And already we've seen the Chinese authorities completely crack down on the way that people mine Bitcoin. So it's something that we're going to see more and more and more of as we move into the future. Earlier, we talked about ransomware attacks and payments. About all these ransomware, every single payment has been made through Bitcoin because Bitcoin helps you keep your anonymity, right? It helps you keep your anonymity. And so we're going to see a whole lot more regulation. However, Bitcoin and crypto is here to stay, but not in the way that we may think. A lot of countries are going to start releasing their versions of cryptocurrencies. We've already seen China announce one, and we've seen the US already announce like a white paper is being written for them to be able to issue their own digital currencies. So I think that over 90% of the cryptocurrencies that are available are going to go zero, are going to just get destroyed out. But I think that there's going to be about 5% of cryptocurrencies that are going to remain because they actually have some kind of utility for something in the future other than just being a crypto token or something like that. And then finally, the last part of this is consumers. To show how strong the demand is from consumers, last week, which was Memorial Day weekend, the TSA announced the highest number of travelers to go through checkpoints, with over 2 million people deciding to board a flight over the weekend. This is the highest level that we have seen since the pandemic began. But even more important than that, Hilton CEO said that 93% of hotel rooms were occupied over the weekend. 93%. People are extremely excited to get out. People want to go places. As a matter of fact, if you've been watching the NBA playoffs, one thing that I noticed was just how many people are in stadiums. If you've watched any baseball game, okay, wait, let's be honest. Nobody watches baseball. If you watched any baseball highlights, you will see just how many people are in stands. In fact, some stands are actually fully packed. People are ready to get out and start living life and start buying things. People are in restaurants. People are going to clubs again. People are doing all the things that they've been wanting to do, but haven't been able to do. As a matter of fact, there was a tour. There was an artist. I think it was, oh my gosh, why am I forgetting his name? It starts with a T. Ty something. Is it Ty Dollar Sign? Maybe. No, I don't think it was Ty Dolla $ign. It was somebody else. But anyway, he announced a tour, rather. I think it was a tour or something, some kind of festival that he does every single year. And when he announced it, tickets sold out immediately. In under like an hour, all the tickets were sold out. And these tickets are not exactly like $10 tickets. These were like expensive tickets, but it sold out immediately. Why? The demand of people wanting to go back outside and wanting to take part in different events is extremely high. And I expect this to continue at least for the rest of this year and even going into next year. I expect people to have this demand to just not want to be in their house for a minute. However, there are a few things that I also see and expect. I expect more increases in people buying cosmetics because as we go off and go outside, as a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure you people have probably started to notice it as well, is there's a lot of cosmetic shelves that are empty right now because as people start getting up and about, they're going to start applying more things to the face and starting to make themselves look presentable outside of their homes. I also expect that some things, as much as things change, I also expect a lot of things to stay the same. I don't expect people to take away or remove the convenience factor that they've realized with online shopping. I expect that to just continue to grow and grow and grow. I also expect that home gyms are going to continue to be a major boom as we move into the future. As much as people found out that, hey, if I just want to work out, if I'm already working from home and I want to work out, I can just during lunchtime real quick, go downstairs and start working out. A lot of people love that convenience. Some people love the gym, but some people just prefer the convenience. I think it's going to be the same way with home theaters. I think a lot of people are spending a lot of money on electronics, which is another thing that I expect is a lot more money will be spent on people improving their home theater and arrangements, trying to make their home a little bit more of a theater environment. And then I expect people for at least for the short term, at least going into like towards November before people start forgetting again, for hand sanitizers and Clorox wipes to be on every single person's bag for a while and it to actually be used on a regular basis. But I don't think that we are going back to the levels of to 2019 levels of shopping in stores or 2019 levels of going to movie theaters or anything of that sort. But yeah, those are my predictions for this year. Let me know, what predictions do you have for this year? Put it down in the comments if you're watching this on YouTube or if you're listening to this on any podcast streaming platform. Put it, share with me, whether it's on Instagram, on Twitter, or just send me an email at ramblingmindshow@gmail.com and just share with me your thoughts about your predictions on what do you think inflation is going to do this year as it combines with supply chain? What do you think we're going to do with vaccines? What do you think about cryptocurrency? And what do you think consumers, you guys are consumers, where are you guys standing? Where are you guys being on this subject? Are you guys spending more online than you are in person? Where do you think all of this stuff is going to go? Just let me know. Send that stuff out to me and I would just enjoy reading that stuff. And then I'll probably share some of it on the podcast as well. I hope you enjoyed that little snippet of the Rambling Mind podcast. If you want more of the Rambling Mind podcast, or if you want to listen to the whole episode that you just heard, go check it out on any podcast listening platform, whether that be Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, Breaker, Stitcher. I could go on, but you guys already know which podcast you love to use to listen to. So go check it out. Link down in the description as well. I'm gonna catch y'all later. Peace.